definition of a good pilot is one who has the same takeoffs as landings, and I don't. So by definition, I'm not a good pilot.
Should we talk about that? I'd suggest we say to anyone that may be listening and doesn't actually know your story, John, that you give them a brief summary, and then we can go through what actually happened.
Okay, 1991, so the majority of people are probably far too young to, you've got to be over 45 to vaguely remember the atmosphere. The first Gulf War, after Iraq had invaded Kuwait, an international community, including Arab nations, as well as the Brits, Americans, France, and all that sort of, the groups, basically the globe, effectively, said you can't invade countries anymore. And put together an allied force and removed Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard from out of Kuwait. I was involved in that in the air power bit in a very small sense. And on the first day of the war, there was the only day low-level sortie. And I was attacking an airfield to the south east of Baghdad. We'd taken off from Bahrain. Our bombs didn't come off. We were attacking a dispersed operating base, which means a spare operating base rather than a main operating base. And coming off, I was hit by surface-to-air missile. I was also hit by anti-aircraft guns. The surface-to-air missile took out my right-hand engine and exploded, took out my fly-by-wire system. So I've gone from a Grand Prix racing car to a cart horse, effectively. Then on the right-hand side, anti-aircraft gun hit my right-hand wing, hit my sidewinder missile, a 4-meter torch of flame shot out the front of my wing and started to cut my wing off. We flew for about 2 to 3 minutes trying to solve the problem. The aircraft became a ball of flame. We ejected into the desert for about 2 hours, then found by Iraqi soldiers, 25 soldiers buried us in the sand with machine gun fire. I don't know how they missed. And then we were taken off to Baghdad, and we were abused for 7 weeks. During that time, I was paraded on television, all rather puffy-faced and beaten up. And that, my eternal chagrin, that's they reckon 650 million people on the planet saw that image of me having been beaten up. So when I returned back home, I had quite a lot of attention for a couple of years.
And you're still getting that attention because you're here to discuss that in 2024.
No, I do get it. I'm a bit of a moral obscenity. I get it. Look, I went to war with friends and friends of mine died. We lost, a lot of Allied soldiers. And also, let's not forget, it depends which figures you take, upwards of 100,000 plus, and there are varying figures up to even worse figures of Iraqis died because of Saddam Hussein's obsessions and his regime. And most people, war removes people's lives and a lot of people suffer. And then why I say a moral obscenity, because of the televised, sort of us being televised, myself and my navigator, John Nichol, our lives at 29 were transformed because of media attention. It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it right, it just is. So I can't change that, but you've got to be... It's just balancing my own moral framework that you've just got to accept. And I do it as my captivity. I accept what happened to me in captivity. It is what it is. That's what I always say on First Year. It is what it is.
I want to acknowledge what you said about the fact that it was war. I think it's very easy to sit in a podcast, talk about aeroplanes, talk about the kind of dogfighting that we just went through. I'm excited by what I'm hearing, but that's training in the Welsh Valleys, I assume, or maybe abroad. And when you've been talking about you get the other guy, that's you done. You're dead. That's the reality of what you were training for, and you're put into these hostile environments. And obviously, you've mentioned you've lost colleagues, we've lost allies, and I'm sorry to hear that. how much detail can we go into?
Because whatever you want, everyone.
It sparks interest. What happened to you sparks interest, a lot of interest. That would explain why so many people watched the TV footage.
Yes, because I was everyone's son or daughter. I get that. At the time, as I say, it's like my parents' generation trying to describe what it was like for Britain to win the World Cup in 1966. And we all bemoan that we haven't done the English football team. But at the same time, we don't quite remember the atmosphere, what it must have been like, because we weren't around. It's very challenging, because the moral framework has changed, because we've been at war for 30 years since that 1991, and now it's not even on television. Very difficult to describe to people now. No smartphones back then, by the way, because the smartphone came in 1991, first Apple phone, iPhone. To say we were paraded on television, the last time prisoners of war were paraded on television was in the 1970s, 60s and 70s, and that had a huge effect on the American political will to fight. So that's why he paraded us on television. But we just, before then, I'd spent just before I put on TV, 5 days in captivity. I do remember I'd been shot down by guns and missiles. I'd been buried in the sand by machine gun fire. They took me off to Baghdad. When I arrived in Baghdad, you go through this corridor of troops who are kicking, rifle butting and thumping you. You've got a bag on your head, you're blindfolded. They're smashing your face against the side of the lorry, hitting you around the head with pistol butts. I get pushed in a room about the size of this studio. Within 2 seconds of getting in a room, a bomb hits the room. The whole of this ceiling comes down. The 2 walls get blown up. You get picked up 2 meters and get thrown 4 meters. So I've just been blown up, and then I've just spent, before I got on parade on TV, I've had 4 to 5 days of no sleep. I'm beaten with baseball bats, with rubber truncheons. They set your hair on fire. They burn you with cigarettes. I was threatened with gang rape. They threatened to shove guns and knives up my arse. They threatened to cut my dick off. You hear people being tortured. I lost 2.5 stone in 7 weeks. I'm in solitary confinement. I've been blown up 6 times. I had 2 crushed vertebrae from the for the injections. So the first thing they do is they beat basically your broken back. This is not where you want to go. But that is ultimately, why does a nation train young men and women to fly jets? Because humans have not found the ability to talk to each other with a difference before they meet a point where you say there is a use of violence, military force. And you get to a point where the conversation collapses. We then use force, and I have, signed up to apply the skills that I get taught to apply force for Britain. And if you're in Iraq and someone like me gets shot down, and I have information, but you have the same view, you're protecting your family, your country, and everything you believe in. And when, as they were bombed consistently over days and days and days, of course, you're not going to be very nice to me. And that is ultimately the product of war, until eventually either economics stops people, they run out of, like in Ukraine, they could run out of bombs and missiles and everything like that, or morale, where a nation, you can no longer get people to carry on fighting. So those are the 2 reasons. And funny enough, nations then go, well, let's go back and talk again. And so military force is just on the spectrum of political dialogue. It's unfortunately the dialogue collapses, but every war doesn't last forever, and then it will re-engage in conversation. In the middle, that's why you have countries spend $2 million a head on pilots like me, army officers, naval ships, is to protect the nation's interests.
And that's the reality. We all wish we could skip that.
Makes me sound very serious, doesn't it? But that is the reality. For all the glamorous, and I use that word advisedly, but it is the glamour, because I do look at these jets and go, wow. But they're not doing it because they want you to be wearing a flight suit at an air show. They're doing it because the nation expects you. They expect a return on their investment. We're the ultimate insurance policy.